And you mentioned something really important that at this young age, we kind of like cut off when we go cerebral, we go cognitive into our head and we don't feel our body. And with a lot of people that are dealing with this stuff with their kids, particularly, with like estrangement or parental alienation, we're watching this happen to our kids where they completely cut off, shut down, split, whatever the word is. And what's actually happening for them is what you're explaining, is where they're just leaving their body, they're stuck in their head, and they're not really able to discern or feel what's really happening. Hi, my name's Lawrence Strauss, and welcome to the Family Disappeared podcast. Today we have an amazing show. One of my favorite people, Noah Rothschild, will be on with us today. And Noah is a integrative body psychotherapist, somatic work, breath work, inner child work, just life affirming and life changing for me. And if you're struggling with relationships with the kids or grandkids or your parents or whoever, this is just a wonderful path forward, and it's an empowerment model. It's something that you need a therapist to start, and there's all these different tools that you can use at home on a daily basis that are transformational. If you're new to the community, welcome to the community. We're so excited to have you here. We have so many different tools available. Definitely check the show notes. We have a free 12-step program that's available to anyone. I think there's 18, 19 meetings a week online now, and we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and we're providing all these services free, and we'd love to have you as part of our community. And yeah, this is a really fun show. I'm very excited for you to check it out, and please send us a message, comment on whatever, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're listening to this or watching this. And our email is in the show notes, familydisappeared@gmail.com. Let us know what you think, new topics, different guests you want us to have on, maybe something you want us to dig into a little bit deeper. And that's my shtick. Let's just jump on in. Man, this takes me back, like in my early stages of dealing with parental alienation, estrangement, erasure, whatever word resonates with you. I was in so much emotional pain and physical pain, and I didn't know what was going on. And I landed up going into rehab. You know what I mean? I happened to be sober, but I landed up going into rehab and did this rehab thing, and which was phenomenal. You know what I mean? I really learned a lot about myself. And once I got out, I started experiencing a lot of chronic pain. And I was seeing some different physical therapists and stuff like that. And one of the PTs referred me to somatic therapist. So I go to the somatic therapist's office, and it's Noah. And I go in there and we sit down and we talk, and he does the intake. And I'm like, like telling him my story. And I had been at this rehab a couple years before, and he had been one of the lead therapists there, but he was just on a different team. And now I'm working with this person that introduced me to this new modality, which changed and saved my life. So like every little thing that's happening in life feels like it's happening for a reason, and it leads from one thing to another thing. But it doesn't lead from one thing to another thing unless I'm doing my own inner work. You know what I mean? And we talk about that all the time. Like, I'm responsible for my own inner ecosystem, and somatic therapy is a wonderful way to start working with the inner ecosystem, opening it up, exploring it, expanding it, really figuring out, what your wounds are. Why did you do things in your life that you did? And you're thinking, what does this have to do with me wanting my child back or wanting my life to be different? Well, we have to go back and address these things that we haven't addressed, these things that we've stored in our body, hidden in the dark. And as we start to address this, our life starts to change. And there's spaciousness, and there's creativity, and there's an opportunity for our relationships with every person in our life to change. And this work is what's going to be transformational for our kids, for our grandkids. And if you're estranged, alienated from your parents or grandparents, this work is also going to be what's transformational in you connecting with them. This has changed my relationship with my parents, with my sibling, with my other family members more than anything else, and in concert with so many other things that I've done. So that is definitely enough out of me. Let's jump right on into the show. And Noah's going to be offering a couple free things as we go through the show. So make sure to listen, and we'll make sure to share those things with you too at the end of the show. So Noah, it's so incredibly great to see you, and I'm so excited for our audience to get to know you. So Noah, could you just go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, great to see you, Lawrence, and great to be here and be a guest on your podcast. And I just want to share that I'm a practitioner of integrative body psychotherapy, and I trained in that over 20 years ago, and I became a teacher of that method of what we would call in psychology somatic psychotherapy. And personally, this method of therapy changed my life. When I was 20 years old, I was depressed and suicidal and abusing substances. And it brought me to a place where I realized that I had core wounds from my life that were stored in my body, from an adoption wound that I carried from being adopted at birth, a child of divorce, and other things that happened in my childhood that were playing out in my life and causing me to sabotage myself and take on substances and other things that were holding me back in my life. And from the moment I found this therapy, I decided that this is what I want to do because it changed my life radically in my ability to release blocks that were stored in my body, as well as heal parts of myself that were pre-verbal wounds that I carried around, as well as limiting belief systems that were holding me back in my life. And so from that point on, I went and I trained to become a therapist, and then I trained in this form of therapy. And I was the head family therapist at Passages in Malibu for 10 years. And then I've been in private practice for the past 15 years or so. And so that's what I've been doing. And I've also run a bunch of group programs called Heal the Child Within, as well as providing somatic psychotherapy for my clients.
Thank you for that, Noah, and it is so great to have you. I think we've known each other for close to 18 years, so it's always fun to bring friends, family in, and have these conversations. And you're just phenomenal at what you do. And I just want to break this down a little bit for the audience because somatic is such a buzzword and people hear it all the time. So for me, like somatic is like the mind body relationship, and somatic is really getting into the body, right? So I'd like the audience to understand this. Like we have a cognitive thought, we're thinking about something, but it's actually happening in the body first. And that's what you mean when you're talking about somatic. Is that correct?
Yeah, so somatic is really the term I believe comes from soma, which is I believe it's a Latin term for the body. That's what I believe. But somatic means that we have a body and that the body has taken on all these perceptions and feelings, and the body has reacted towards stress in our life all the way back from when we were in utero all the way into our adult life, and that the body is actually before the mind. Much of therapy takes into account that the mind is really sort of all that there is and all that we're working with. But when we come into this world, we're feeling oriented beings. So if we just work with the mind and we don't work with somatics, which is the body, then we end up missing a real integral part of what shows up in our life and how we perceive the world. So somatic psychotherapy and somatic just means working with the body and how the body stores emotion, trauma, feelings, and beliefs.
Thank you for that explanation. And for folks out there that are struggling with, alienation, estrangement, erasure, whatever kind of disconnection from the family, when I came to this modality, I was in so much emotional and physical pain. Like chronic pain was part of my story. and I couldn't get to what was happening because I was just going through traditional therapy. So I don't know if you get this a lot with folks, Noah, but like I was just talking about my stuff over and over again, and I felt like I was just trapped in the story. And once I started working with you, we started bypassing the story and, like you're saying, get into the body. Is this like something you hear over and over again where people come from traditional talk therapy, that they've been doing it for 15, 10, 20 years, and then they come here and it's like a breath of fresh air jumping into the ocean, like this like really spiritual introduction into another part of therapy?
Yeah, so many people have done talk therapy and they're used to sort of regurgitating their stories, and maybe they see some change initially on the level of the mind or just insight and awareness. And that's how most therapists have been trained traditionally. And then they come to, just like you, to experience this other modality of therapy, that there's a whole other world that's been going on in our body. And research has shown that our heart actually has sensory neurons that are separate from our mind, and it's really cool that there's a lot of research on this recently, that there is almost a separate mind in our body. And so when we start unlocking that, we start to realize that there are perceptions inside of us that have been mostly unconscious. And some people say about 99% of our life is created through our subconscious. And so, really, the key to the subconscious is the body. And when you start working with that, like you experienced, you start unlocking places that have recreated pain and generational wounding that we may have carried around as well, that may have been passed on to our current family or other important relationships in our life. And it is sort of an awakening that starts to happen, because most of us left our body in the first 7 years of our life because our parents didn't know how to help us stay present in that early feeling place that was in our body, that natural place that young children should be able to hang out in and be present in. And so when we open that up, there's there's a release, and there's a whole body of insight that happens from understanding where we hold in our body and different feelings in our body. And in some ways, we come back to what we would call our core self, a part of us that we left a long time ago, that has the capacity to fully be authentic and have an authentic voice that we may have never even known was possible before, because we've just been living in our thinking mind in our life.
Yeah, I love that you bring that in, and it's kind of like when you start working with somatic therapy, and for me particularly, IBP, integrative body psychotherapy. There is this flood of awareness that comes in, like Noah, like you were just saying. Like I was living my life, but I was only living like 3 or 4% of my life, and once I started to get back into my body, like everything like opened up. It was kind of it was a little bit overwhelming, and at the same time, I could finally see things that were happening instead of just being stuck in my head. I became so much more aware of what was going on, and how I started to interact with people really shifted. And you mentioned something really important, that at this young age we kind of like cut off when we go cerebral, we go cognitive into our head, and we don't feel our body. And with a lot of people that are dealing with the stuff with their kids, particularly, with like estrangement or parental alienation, we're watching this happen to our kids, where they completely cut off, shut down, split, whatever the word is. And what's actually happening for them is what you're explaining, is where they're just leaving their body, they're stuck in their head, and they're not really able to discern or feel what's really happening. Can you talk a little bit how you get so locked into that you can't get out of it? I guess is what my question is.
Yeah, yeah. So we we all need something to stay in our body when we come to this world. The very early part of being in this world is being in our limbic brain. And the limbic brain is a very primitive part where we register safety and security, the feeling tone of being loved in our body. And in psychology, we call this limbic attunement. It's kind of akin to what we might call in spirituality or in common dialogue unconditional love, a sense of feeling felt, seen, and understood for who we are. And so when we are felt, seen, and understood for who we are, we walk around with a sense that we can be in our body. We can feel safe in our body. We can feel safe to be here because we're fully loved and seen for who we are. And that's an experience that most of us didn't get. And as parents, when we were children, if we did not receive that, we learn to go into in what we call in IBP terms and what many other therapies may call they call defense mechanisms, but we call it our character style. And our character style is when we experience a rupture in that love, unconditional love, or limbic attunement, we learn to protect ourselves because it's not safe to be in that core. And most of us, as you were saying, learn in our first 7 years of our life that it wasn't safe to be there. And so one of the first ways we learn to protect against that in our character style, which is our armor or our defense mechanism to protect against loss of love, is when we don't feel that love or that limbic attunement, loving attunement, we split off from ourself, our body, and our aliveness because it's too painful to be in that space in which parents who don't know how to be present, to be in interactions with them, it feels too painful because it feels as if there's a void or an emptiness because we want to be loved and that other person is not there. So we carry that wounding and we carry that defensive posture of being split off and detached. And then through multi-generational transmission process, but also just how we show up with our kids at some point when they may be the age and stage of our own injuries from growing up, we may start to model this style of splitting off unconsciously. They may see that from us, or they may feel our lack of attunement, and then they learn to split off. Or they experience some type of injury in the family that's probably recreated through our own story and our own injuries from our childhood. And they learn also to split off to protect against not feeling loved or that loving attunement as well.
Right. So they're craving a sense of safety. And if they don't feel the safety, then they got to go away to protect themselves, to protect their core. Because if they can't protect themselves and they feel like they're going to die, they feel like it's a crisis. So when the kids are actually cutting or splitting off, it's not personal. They're just trying not to die. And when we did that, or I'll talk for myself, when I did that as a child, I was just trying not to die because I wasn't getting the attunement from my parents. Right.
Exactly. So for children, if we don't if we don't feel that sense of loving attunement, or if we feel that we're not loved, we need love for survival. We can't just pack our bags and move out and live on our own until we're a teenager or an adult, and because we won't survive out there. And so we need that love to survive. And if we don't feel that love, um, we need to find another way to protect ourselves to survive. And there's research that shows that kids don't get physical affection in Romanian orphanage studies and other studies end up dying or getting sick or going catatonic. I mean, so that's how much love is important, and that sense of loving attunement is important. If we do not receive that, we protect ourselves to survive and not feel annihilation, or actually to not be left as well, where we could die.
Right, right. And just to clarify for folks out there that aren't necessarily understanding the languaging that we're using. So attunement is me coming home and like checking in with my own inner ecosystem, my breath, my body, feeling my feet on the ground, like coming back to my body. You know, there's a lot of different practices, and in IBP, it's particularly breath practice. And I think this is a key point that I just want to point out to people. Like, we have to be attuned to ourselves before we can attune to our children, before we can attune to our friends, before we can attune to anyone else. So I think just the idea of attunement is just being home with yourself, feeling your body, feeling your breath, being really present. And is that how you would describe, just in a real simple layperson's term, attunement as well?
In a real, yeah, it's about being present first for ourselves, and many of us haven't learned how to do that or haven't known how to do that, but it's about being present and then present with somebody else. And I would add that it's also about feeling that presence, not just in our head, but in our body. Um, and we want our children to potentially feel that as well, or anyone we're in relationship to feel that presence. So presence in our body first, and feeling that presence, being present, and then being present with another from that state where they could potentially feel that presence in their body. So that's what attunement is.
Thank you for that. And for people that are still struggling with that, sometimes when you're in a conversation with someone and you're having a conversation with someone and everyone's just talking and no one's really getting each other, that's a lack of attunement. And when you're with someone and all of a sudden your eyes lock up and you really feel present and you can see what they're feeling and saying and you feel really seen and heard, that's what attunement is that thing. And I had a really weird experience when I was doing the teacher training in IBP. Is I got the idea of attunement and love confused because I didn't get this attunement, this presence from my parents. So when I'd go out into a conversation and I'd start having a conversation with someone and they thought, and not that they thought, and I felt like they were really present, I was really present with them, I thought I was in love. I thought it was, it was like this eros, this kind of like connection that I didn't get from my family of origin. Do you hear people saying that a lot, like getting this attunement and love confused because they've never really had it?
Yeah, so a lot of us have deep longings to be seen and to experience that presence, or what we're calling attunement. Um, and so for so many of us, we've sort of bottled up those longings, and we haven't fully experienced that presence attunement within ourselves. And so we start to cultivate that and feel that. And I can feel that presence and attunement in my body. That's why I'm smiling. That's why you're smiling as well, because once you get it, you kind of know how to find it. And then all of a sudden you're bringing that energy out there, and you connect with somebody else, and you're connecting from that place. And it just, you start to feel kind of a exchange of love energy. But additionally, it can tap into just deep longings of where we never really felt loved, and it feels so good that for so many of us, yes, we can feel like, wow, I'm in love with this person, or this person is in love with me in some way. And we are feeling sort of a kind of one of the maybe hierarchies of love energy being exchanged. But a lot of times that can be even can ignite a feeling tone of romantic love, even though it's attunement love. And yeah, so a lot of our work is also just to be aware of that and just to feel into that energy without having to acknowledge that it can feel that way, but without having to get lost in that longing to get that need filled from outside of ourselves.
Yeah, and that was really funny as I was talking and then you were talking, you started to smile and stuff. Like what a great example, because for me physically in my body, I like dropped into my body. I felt more connected to you. I could feel my body's a little bit hot, a little bit sweaty as I'm doing this podcast interview. So a little bit of anxiety or whatever comes up. And it's like, oh, Noah's here with me too. We're just chatting and hanging out. Oh, I love him. You know what I mean? And it's really that attunement to myself and to you. Like I feel now we can play. Now we're ready.
Yeah, and so we feel that love energy, and we feel that connection like we're having right here, right now, and it feels great. It almost feels like that childlike, open part of us. Yeah, we can play together, and we can interact from that place, and kind of magic happens from that place, because it's a place that accesses that, you know, 99% that we haven't really used of that kind of creative energy that we haven't tapped into, and we were only maybe in for a brief window in our childhood when sort of anything was possible.
Totally. And I find this for me when I'm talking with my daughter that I do have access to, that I work to get to this place that we're experiencing now, and it takes work because I got to be really present with myself, and then I just got to show up and meet her where she is. And as we start to create some trust, and she sees that I'm listening, and hearing. Like, I'm not trying to explain to her, I'm not trying to tell her what she's saying is right or wrong, but the more I listen to her and the more I meet her where she is, then we drop into this place. And I know that as a parent or a grandparent or even as a child, like, we're all craving this, and it's a really, really magical moment. So if you're a parent or grandparent or child and you're struggling to figure out how to connect, this is the magic sauce. Like, this is the thing that is really life changing, and something you can work on through somatic therapy, through IBP, getting into your body, getting really present with yourself, so you can learn how to transition in to being really present with other people. And I would say, Noah, what would be a quick way you could tell people to actually get an opportunity to attune to themselves? Is there a quick exercise you could just share with us? And if you're driving or doing something, don't do this at this particular moment. Save it, come back, try it. Or maybe you can. I don't know what you're going to say, Noah, but I'm thinking don't do it in the car.
Yes. So one of the quickest ways that I teach people to access this attunement energy is to, and if you are driving, definitely maybe pull over for this part if you want to do this, or wait till you get home for this part. But we put one hand on our belly, one hand on our chest, and we first want to learn how to take a full breath. Most of us learn to maybe take a mini breath in our upper chest and a very shallow breath, or we learn to just breathe a little bit into our belly. And so many of us are taught, oh, well, that's where we're supposed to breathe, just into our belly. But actually, infants and children, when we come to this world, we have a full capacity for breath that moves from our diaphragm and our belly all the way up. And so I actually teach people just to take 3 breaths or so from their mouth initially to begin with, and make sure your hand on your belly moves and make sure your hand on your upper chest moves. And we take 3 breaths together and we pull that up, and we pull that from our belly. And so just if you're able to, take these 3 breaths, and you'll breathe through your mouth a full breath, pulling in from your belly all the way high up to your upper chest. 1, and there's sort of like a mini hold at the top. And then we take our second one. And on each exhale, we're letting go. Make sure to let all the air out. And we keep our eyes open for these breaths. And we take one more breath. And on the last breath, I want everybody to hold at the top for a count of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and see if you can let go for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And just feel some openness in your body. And now switch the breath to your nose. And then I want everybody now to close your eyes for a moment. And this is how we start to find that attunement and that presence after we open our body with some breaths. I want you to notice what you feel in your body first. You might feel a little tingly feeling, or a warmth, or some energy in your head. Take a few breaths through your nose, just gentle breaths. And I want everybody to think about a moment in your life, a happy moment, or preferably a moment of love, a memory of love. It could be a pet. It could be a grandparent. It could be a moment on the beach, or a moment in nature. It could be God or higher power. Try to imagine some source of unconditional love or happiness. And imagine that source of unconditional love or happiness, or a memory of this, is sending you unconditional love, or you're experiencing that memory. And feel that moment of unconditional love or happiness. Try to feel that in your body. And usually we feel it in our chest, right around our heart. So put your hand over your heart. And when we feel this, just imagine that this energy can spread a little bit throughout your body. Open up to this energy. And we want to sort of start to really allow this energy. Imagine that that source of unconditional love is sending you that love, and that memory is happening now. And when you feel it, put your hand on your heart and say the words out loud, I am. I am. And we start to develop a place in our body that we can come back to, where we know for sure that we can experience presence and attunement. And then when we have that, we can bring that out to our relationships. And so that's the practice to come back to.
Oh, that was beautiful, Noah. Thank you for that. And as I was taking the breaths along with you, I started to feel that prickly kind of sensation in my body. And I'd like to say this for people that are trying this for the first time and you start to feel those sensations. It's like, whoa, stranger danger, stop. You know what I mean? Because I'm not used to feeling those feelings in my body. So it takes some time for your body to get used to it. And IBP and other somatic practices, there's a lot of breath work that starts to open up different parts in your body. And I'll share this. When I started working with Noah and we'd do breaths, and the breaths get a little bit more intense and a little bit more intense, complicated, just there's patterns to it. I started to feel energy in my body, and then the energy would stop. So I want to just kind of like transition to this part when we're tuning to ourselves and we're feeling the energy in our body. And then I could feel like my face, my arms, my chest, but I couldn't feel anything in my lower body, like from probably my solar plexus all the way down to maybe my upper thighs. And can we talk about like these blocks that we have in our body where we can't get our energy flowing from the tips of our toes to the top of our head? What's happening there, Noah? Wow. I'm going to give a double wow for Noah. You know, what a interesting conversation, and some of the stuff is pretty heady and gets deep, and some of the stuff is just sweet, like when we have these moments of attunement and we actually role modeling this on the podcast, and you can hear the voices change, the cadence change, us dropping into the conversation. And that's the medicine. That's the magic. That's what I want to have in every relationship. That's what I want to have with my kids. You know what I mean? And when I do have that, I realize all those times that I didn't have that, all those times that I was just going through the motions, all those times that I was role modeling that that's what life is. And now that my relationships are challenged with my children, I can see that I led to that too. Like I set the table for them to use these same coping mechanisms that I used, and it feels really good to be able to love a different way, and to be able to put this out into the universe, and hopefully create some change and some good and some healing. And yeah, there's a bunch of great stuff in the show notes, and we're going to have the good parent messages there from Noah, a couple of other offerings from Noah. There's a link to the 12-step program that's free and online and accessible from everywhere. There's our email address if you want to send out any kind of comments, and please remember to like, share, do something today, you know. And I think in this part of the episode, Noah talks about taking some breaths. Yeah, just getting into your body, feeling the places that you're locked up. What a wonderful resource to have that you can access anywhere. And wow, that's enough out of me. And in case nobody's told you yet today, I love you, and the only reason that I can love you is because I love myself. And I had to learn to love myself, and it took a lot of work, and then it created spaciousness for me to be able to say on this show that I love you. And yeah, couldn't have done it before. So enjoy the day, and I will see you around the neighborhood.